So good morning, everybody, and welcome to another in our series of Agency Masters. Before we start, I just want to thank you all very much for joining us. I do appreciate that you've all got day jobs. Hopefully the topics that we cover on these webinars is useful and insightful. And today we are going to be talking about agency reporting. So basically, it's about tracking the right stuff in your agency. So during the webinar, we'll be asking, what are you tracking? When are you tracking? And ultimately, are you doing anything with that information? Before we jump in, usual stuff. For those who don't know me, I'm Steve. I'm one of the co-founders of the Agency Works. And I've been working with agencies for over 20 years now. And today, as usual, I am joined by our agency veteran, which I know she loves being called, Kate, who is also a principal consultant here at the Agency Works. So thanks for joining, Kate.
Thank you.
So this morning's webinar will last around about 25 minutes. So hopefully plenty of time for you to grab a cuppa before your next call. So we all know that business analysis often skips your to-do list, especially when you're busy working in your agency. But could you be missing out in any sort of game changer? So today's session, we'll be looking at what great business intelligence looks like, how to use that data to shape decision-making, and highlighting some key agency reporting benchmarks. So where's a good place to start? As you can imagine, agency reporting is a pretty big topic, and we probably don't have enough time to cover absolutely everything on today's session. However, we believe that what makes a great agency falls into three pillars. And these three pillars are your profit, your people, and your pipeline. And on today's session, we'll be delving a little bit deeper into each of those three pillars. So I'm sure that you've all heard this phrase before, but an agency that only focuses on the revenue side, which is your vanity, might look successful, but could actually struggle with financial stability. In contrast, focusing on your profit, which is your sanity, ensures that your agency is successful and capable of sustaining its operations and hopefully growth over a longer term. So balancing these two key aspects is key. Right, we know to create a successful agency, you need to build a strong financial base. And for agencies to grow, you want to aim for the following KPIs. Now, these are pretty standard industry KPIs, which some of you may be aware of. For those who don't know, we've picked out four key ones. The first one is known as a number of things: operating profit, EBIT, but basically it's your sales revenue minus all operating expenses. And it's an indication of how much profit you'll be able to retain in that period before paying interest and tax deductions. Typically, we would expect a good agency to be achieving anywhere between 15 and 20%. If you're achieving more than 20%, well done. But you may also need to think about whether that is sustainable and whether you're investing enough back in your people and in additional growth.
And the second one there, salary to gross profit. So rising salary costs make this a challenging KPI, but to achieve a 20% EBIT, you want to be aiming for about 55% salary to gross profit ratio, which means 25% for the rest of the agency's overhead. My good maths come in there through there.
Well done.
If your salary ratio is higher than 65%, you're not making enough money. So to run that profitable agency, you need to be keeping a close eye on costs and knowing what you're working with.
Totally. And on the same theme, when we look at gross profit per head, which is something a lot of agencies talk about, there is that holy grail of £100,000 gross profit per head. Not many agencies manage to achieve it. We've actually just posted a blog about that on LinkedIn that you may have seen. Most high achieving agencies will look to achieve somewhere around the 90,000 per head, gross profit per head. So as an example, if you run a 20-man agency, and this includes all staff, so not just chargeable, then your gross income should be around the 1.7 to 1.8 million. So this is a good KPI because it also helps keep a check on your recruitment policy, because if that number is too low, then potentially you've got too many people.
Absolutely. And the last one, keeping 3 months plus of overhead in cash reserve. So that would be at least more if possible. Because having a cash reserve will help stop you making bad decisions, things like taking on work that isn't suitable, or keeping profitable clients to cover the monthly bills. And if you get into this cycle, it usually leads to very unhappy clients and an unhappy team. But having cash reserves can help you withstand a short period of reduced revenue and focus on the overall plan for your agency. But to drive those numbers, you need to be looking at what's making you money and what's not.
Yeah, and for those who may remember this was immortalized, this phrase, by Notorious B.I.G. back in 1997, which was a time that I was just leaving university, and some of you may not have even been born. But the idea of this is highlights the idea that increased wealth and growth can bring their own set of challenges. And for agencies, I think it's important to anticipate these issues and therefore put kind of strategies in place to manage them effectively. If you do that, hopefully you can navigate the complexities of the growth and turn potential problems into opportunities.
Absolutely. No problems. So looking at your top level KPI reporting, it can be an easy trap to fall into just thinking big. So let's break it down into smaller bite-sized profit reporting types. The first one on this slide is tracking client profitability. And this helps you identify who's really boosting your agency profit margins and who could be draining them. So knowing the difference between your vampire clients and those you need to treasure is the difference between knowing who's making you money and who isn't. It might feel like turning down work or ditching clients is against the grain, but hanging on to unprofitable stuff just makes you busy without making you successful. Remember, if they don't fit into fun, fame, or fortune, then they need to go. Project profitability, sort of which projects generate the most profit and why? Is it the people working on it, maybe a project manager, an account handler, or maybe a specific team making everything run like clockwork? Or if projects are regularly running over without being charged or even acknowledged, sort of why is this? Are your client services team accurately estimating? Are they charging for additions when there is scope creep? And there's a statistic on the screen there. If you overservice by just 10% over the period of a year, you're effectively working free for 5 weeks, which is quite a scary one. So make sure you're carefully looking at whether you're sticking to your SOWs. Job type, this sort of relates to what job types generate the most profit in your agency. Is there a specific type of work that you offer that is more profitable than another? Or maybe it's a certain phase within the job that takes longer to do. Maybe you can charge more for strategy rather than production, or vice versa. And of course, it might be that one function can't sort of work without the other. But if you don't know sort of which is most profitable, then you can't do anything about it. And the last one there, recoverability. So I talk about this a lot with my clients. So recovery tells you how much you've billed against how much you could have billed. So for example, you've billed maybe 10K, but the value of the work and the time is actually 12K. So you've unrecovered by 2,000. So ultimately, the higher the rate, the more profitable your business will be. Recovery is unlikely to be 100% across all projects, but if it's below 90, sort of why is that? Are people spending more time than estimated because they have nothing to do? Have you underquoted and don't want to go back to the client? Or maybe it's a new person working on that piece of work that needs more time to be trained. Measuring and finding out why can have a big impact on your profit margins.
Yeah, all key metrics. And I think if you're looking to drive those numbers up, then realistically, everybody in the agency needs to understand their role in making the projects profitable. So you need to almost drive commerciality as a culture internally. But how do we best do that?
Well, we're going to tell you.
Mm.
So the first one is better briefs. So making sure you understand exactly what your client wants, whether that's briefing back to the client or making sure you're asking the right questions. It's essential that your briefing structure is sound to stop over-servicing.
The classic estimate versus quote, this one comes up time and time again, but it is really important. Ideally, your estimate should be what you think you need to deliver the project. So it's almost kind of a true reflection of the number of hours required to deliver that. Your quote is then commercially what you've agreed with your client. And often we'll see agencies where the estimate and the quote are the same, or agencies will retrofit the estimate based on the quote. So if you can differentiate the two, this is where you could add big value. And if you need to, make any kind of discounts if that's applicable.
Yeah, absolutely. See a lot of people doing that.
Mm.
So time versus project style quoting, you might know it's going to take you 10 hours to deliver a piece of work, but actually you can charge way more. Value adding where you can is really going to help those profit margins.
Then you've got cross-selling and upselling, make sure that your clients actually know all of the services you offer. And if they don't, then, or are you measuring, are you selling these into them? Commercially, this is a big winner, as we know that growing your existing clients is much cheaper than trying to acquire on board new clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And tracking live project profitability, it sounds like an obvious one, but I talk to lots of clients that will only reconcile a project at the end. If you have a PMS, then you can set alerts up when you're starting to reach 50 or 75% of the way through. If not, you can set milestones to have a check-in with how your project is performing.
And then you need to, the usual, manage amends and scope creep. Most agencies allow for a couple of rounds of amends. So you just need to ensure that you're not doing more than you've agreed. But if you are, then you need to make sure that you're quoting for those, for anything that almost kind of falls outside the original project scope.
Yeah. And it's easy to just say stop over servicing. But if you continue to do so, you're going to be that statistic that I mentioned earlier of if you over service by 10% over the course of a year, then you're working for free for 5 weeks. So really here, just value your and your team's time.
And finally, to make sure you're reconciling your projects when they come to the end, have a look at what went well, what can be improved on, but also once you've done that, make sure that you're feeding that back into the team because it's really useful information. Moving on to the next pillar that we mentioned at the start, your people. In essence, everything that your agency does originates from the minds and the groups of these people. So hiring the best people and getting the best out of your group of people is also key to your success.
And hiring the talent that you want starts with having an agency where people want to work. So this should really start with your culture. And as you can see, we have the perfect recipe for you on the screen, but we obviously know that it's not that easy. But the questions you could be asking yourself are, does the team have a sense of trust and autonomy? Are they sufficiently challenged and progressing? Is the team supportive and working in a place with psychological safety? And are you celebrating achievements and recognizing their contributions as and when they happen? If you create a culture where people are passionate, you're setting yourself up for success. You'll have a team that's consistently producing great quality work for your clients, and arguably, most importantly, a team that wants to stay. In essence, creating happy people creates a happy business. So where to start when it comes to measuring people's happiness? There are core things that people need to be happy. And if you think about these 4 things, sort of engagement and role clarity, growth and progress, culture and belonging, and safety. So Steve, we've done quite a lot of this at the Agency Works recently. Are there any main areas that you can suggest that people should be asking and tracking?
Well, thanks for asking, Kate. Yes, we have.
Oh.
So I think this is what we've done at the Agency Works, but obviously I think it applies to agencies as well. But there are 9 things that we look to track. The first thing we look is looking at the employee net promoter score, which is a kind of universal measurement that businesses use, but it's on a scale of 0 to 10, almost how likely you are to recommend your agency as a place to work. Second thing we look at is motivation. Do you feel trusted? Then you've got enjoyment. Do you feel supported by the team? Mental health, obviously one of the big factors. Have you felt stressed or burnt out in the last 3 months? And then we look at DE&I, which is diversity, equity, and inclusion. So do you feel a sense of belonging? And then ultimately we look at growth. Do you feel that your career is progressing? Is there a clear development plan? But also there are softer things like the environment that you work in as well, and especially with people working hybridly, or the office environment that you work in, or the facilities that you're given, or the hours that you're contracted to work. You've also got communication. Are you encouraged to voice opinions? And also how clearly the leadership voice theirs back to the team. And then finally, we look at recognition and reward. Do you feel praised and rewarded, at the right time, but also in the right way? So we know that tracking those, and we know the kind of questions that we need to ask. How would we go about recommending you capture that data, Kate?
Well, I've got some top tips here for you, Steve.
Ooh.
So we've got the first one being employee handbooks. So this is an open document that outlines your mission, vision, and expectations around your team, values, and behaviours.
Next one is personal development plans, or PDPs. So this is more where the individual will define their goals, how they want to progress, but also how they can take their own actions to upskill to be able to get there. So this is great for accountability on both sides.
Weekly check-ins. This is just a general check-in with your line manager, whether that's best over phone, email, Teams, or however, it's up to you. But it's a great way to share what's going on sort of more day-to-day and where support is needed or obstacles are preventing productivity.
Again, another one with your line manager, the whole kind of monthly one-to-one, but it should be a safe space to have kind of check-in and checking on progress of those personal development plans as well. But you can also then offer feedback, and I think coaching is really important as well when it's needed.
Yeah, absolutely. Biannual performance and pay reviews. So the frequency of these may look different for your agency, and it's a step up from the one-to-one, so monthly one-to-ones. This is looking at how your team are performing in line with your agency behaviours, your objectives and growth targets that you've outlined in the employee handbook.
And then just simple HR check-ins, promoting a much more kind of open door policy, I think is a great way of a great culture in an agency anyway. So you have an open door policy, but you need to bear in mind as well that some people may prefer a more kind of structured approach to the check-ins. So this is an ideal, no pressure opportunity to make sure that basically everything is okay.
And I've gone too far ahead there. So biannual performance and pay reviews. No, I haven't. I've just completely, whoops, we are live. Okay, so the happiness surveys. So these are what we just talked about a moment ago when we had Jim on the screen. So these have become popular across the agency landscape recently. Sent out anonymously, easy for you to say, and give the team an opportunity to share how they're feeling. So physically reporting on what is often considered a fluffy metric, but really relates to the success of your agency in so many other areas, such as utilisation, retention, and more of those operational KPIs we shared earlier.
And then moving on to our third and final pillar. So when it comes to existing clients, what should we be tracking when it comes to acquiring more business? Firstly, we should say that existing clients should make up around 70 to 75% of your income, because we know that high income from existing clients can indicate strong client relations and satisfaction, but it also results in predictable revenue streams and also reduces the reliance on new client acquisition. So what else should we be tracking? Well, out of that, we would recommend that no more than 20% of your income comes from one client. So this can help reduce your financial risk, but it also helps promote a much more balanced and diverse client portfolio. Second thing is percentage client and revenue retention. So the percentage of clients retained over a specific period, and then the revenue retained from those clients in the same period. Third thing we look at, client targets. So this is related to having specific financial targets set for each client or client segment, and this will include both revenue and profit margins. This can help provide a much more kind of clear financial objective for your client accounts, and it helps track financial performance against those targets. Fourth one, this measures the variety and the combination of services and products that you offer to your clients. We mentioned it previously. You're talking to your clients about delivering design projects, but if you also offer SEO and websites, is there an opportunity to do some upselling, cross-selling? If you do that, then again, another metric is almost looking at the total value of those additional services sold and the percentage of those opportunities that you successfully convert into sales. And then finally, we've mentioned Net Promoter Score before, but that was in relation to employees. This one is much more kind of client focused and is a measure of your client satisfaction and loyalty. So your client is going to rate the likelihood of recommending your agency on a scale of 0 to 10, and a score of 8 and above is considered excellent, but it also indicates the likelihood that that client might refer you, which we know will help with your growth.
So if we're achieving 75% of our income from existing clients, that means we should be aiming for around 25% from new business. Great maths again for me there. It highlights your agency's ability to attract new clients and that your business development is working. But it also reduces your dependency on your current client base. So what should we be tracking? So firstly, client investment and cost of acquisition. This measures the ratio of the revenue generated from a client to the cost incurred to acquire that client. This helps assess your efficiency of marketing and sales efforts in acquiring new clients, but it also helps in understanding the return on investment for client acquisition activities. Second one in, source and lead times. So pretty self-explanatory, but this allows you to track the source of new leads and clients and the time it's taken to convert the leads into clients. It identifies the most productive lead sources, which is useful information for your marketing team too. 3 types of work. So this is your first project versus your ongoing, and this differentiates between income generated from first-time projects with new clients compared to ongoing projects with your existing clients. So that's the balance between acquiring new business and maintaining ongoing work with existing clients. This also helps highlight the types of service most frequently used by your new clients versus those used by your long-term clients. Also looking at growth rates. So do you know how much growth you're achieving in your key areas, such as revenue, client base, or even market share? This metric helps provide a clear picture of your agency's growth and your performance trends. And as an aside, attractive growth rates can also appeal to your potential investors and or stakeholders.
So away from existing clients, obviously, we need to touch on new business as well. So, we know that tracking new business and opportunities and pipeline is really important. But ideally, what should we be tracking? Now, there are quite a few that we could have included, but I've picked out 3 for the sake of this webinar. And the first one is kind of a pipeline view, but obviously weighted. So each opportunity in the pipeline is assigned a kind of a probability of closing. We do that as it provides, I think, a more realistic view of potential revenue, but also helps you prioritize efforts and resources towards the higher probability opportunities than perhaps the low ones. Second one is, this is a KPI that literally just tracks the number of deals won versus the deals lost within a specific period, but it does provide an insight into the effectiveness of your sales strategies. It can identify common reasons for losses and hopefully allow you to address those. But ultimately, this highlights what also works, which will enable you hopefully to replicate those best practices. And then finally, top sources for ideal clients. So again, which sources generate the highest quality leads, and of those leads, which convert into be your ideal clients. When we talk about ideal clients, those that match your target profile and probably bring in the most significant value. So if you do that, that will help you determine which marketing channels and lead sources are most effective, helps you optimize your marketing spend, and also ensures your agency attracts leads that are more likely to convert and provide longer term value. So by monitoring those 3 KPIs, hopefully you can enhance your prospect tracking, you can optimize your sales, and that will hopefully drive more growth and profitability. So that brings us on to our final top 3 takeaways from today's webinar. If we condense them all down, if I start, I think the first one is making sure that you have that commercial culture. So if you're making profit, it kind of ensures your agency has the financial resources to operate effectively, invest in new projects, and if needs be, weather kind of any economic downturns.
And the second one there, tracking your happiness, not your happiness, your team's happiness. So this is essentially looking after your people, and this ensures your team will deliver high quality work, maintain excellent client relations, and even drives more repeat business and referrals. But most importantly, it impacts on your culture and your team morale.
And then finally, we touched on before, if your clients make up or should make up 70 to 75% of your income, if you can achieve that, more stability, more predictable revenue, and you reduce the reliance on more kind of new client acquisition. To summarize that, I think there is actually a kind of a synergy between the 3 things. Good commerciality enables investment in people and technology, which in turn improves service quality and client satisfaction, and that can lead to a stronger pipeline. So if your agency prioritizes people, profit, and pipeline, then you can create a cycle where each element reinforces each other. Okay, so that neatly brings us to the end of today's webinar. Thank you very much for joining us. We hope you found it useful. If there's any question that you might want to ask us or you want to connect, then please do via the details you see on screen or via LinkedIn. Our next Agency Masters is on the 19th of June and is all to do with resource management. So we'll be publicising that shortly. If you want to look at, or if you've missed any kind of previous webinars, or you're interested in any of the other stuff we do, like our popular A-Game series, then just head along to YouTube, or I believe now we're on Spotify. I think we're a published artist now, Kate, on there. So if you've got any time free and you want to look at that information, then do head over there and have a look at previous talks. But thanks once again for joining us. Thanks, Kate, for jumping on the webinar, and I hope you all have a great day.
Cheers, everyone.